Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Enterprise Combined Air Missions webinar. My name is Dana Stefan. I'm with RAS Strategic, and I'll be supporting this webinar today. We're going to start off by quickly walking through the logistics and ground rules for this webinar. First of all, this webinar will be recorded. All attendees' phone lines are muted and are in listen-only mode. You have two ways to join the webinar, that is through your telephone or through your computer's microphone and speakers. The preferred option is to join through your computer's microphone and speakers. To check that your speakers are working properly, you can click on the audio settings button situated at the lower left-hand corner of the menu bar. Otherwise, you can also choose to call through your phone. To contribute to the discussion, you should use the Q&A box. We'll have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, so please make sure to type your questions in advance. Also, when asking questions, please also indicate your name and organization. And given the number of participants on today's webinar, we may not be able to address all your questions, so unanswered questions will be included in an FAQ that will be shared after the webinar. So with that, I will turn it over to Julia Gamas from EPA Office of Air and Radiation for today's presentation. So Julia, let me just stop sharing my screen and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dana.
Okay, here it is. Okay, and we can see your screen.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julia Gamas from the US EPA. On behalf of myself and the co-chairs for the CAER product design team, Tammy Manning and Stacy Knapp, we want to thank you for joining our webinar today. What we'll do is we'll walk you through the CAER project, what it is the Common Emissions Forum initiative. Then we're going to share a live demo of our progress with the Common Emission Forum so far. Please note that it's not a complete product yet. We really are showing you where we are, and then we'll talk a little bit about where we want to go. Most of all, we would like to elicit feedback from you. From what you see already, we want to know what you think. We don't have a lot of time today, so additional information will be available as background slides to this presentation, and we'll make that available on our website after the webinar. So this is the world as we know it now. Air emissions reporting for a facility means going to 4 or up to 5 different places to report to these programs: Toxics Release Inventory, Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program, National Emissions Inventory, and any source test and compliance data via the Compliance and Emissions Data Reporting Interface. And if your state, local, or tribal authority has their own program, in addition, you have to send data to them. The situation is this setup is leading to duplication and inconsistent data. We believe that we can streamline air emissions reporting, and we want to do that via what we've been calling the Common Emissions Forum. That way, the facility would not have to go to so many different places at different times of the year to report their emissions data. Roughly, this is what the Common Forum would do compared to your online tax reporting. You would log into your Common Forum, you would see all your facility information, all the data that you have for that facility. You would be able to do updates to that information. You would have available previous year reports for reference. Then you would enter your input data, and for that you would, activity data, emissions factors, pollutants, all the information that you need to calculate your emissions. And the idea is that if you have a piece of equipment that is emitting several pollutants, regardless of what program they, quote, belong to, you might as well calculate everything while you're there at one time, instead of having to go to different places at different times and re-enter that data or perform the calculations for those specific pollutants. You would submit your data. The form would do a QA check for you. And if you're reporting to the NEI, you would be able to have the state review your submission within the common form before it all gets sent to where it has to go to its final destination. So the key benefits of this combined emissions reporting, first, is eliminate duplication. We want to save you time. We understand that you're very busy and you are at your best when you're doing the job that you do, not when you're filling out forms. So shared data that you have to enter multiple times to different places, you could enter one time. And again, perform all relevant calculations. Of course, there are data elements that are different for each program. You would still enter those, but you would still be saving time because you're consolidating your reporting in one place. On the side of the state, local, tribal authority, and EPA staff, we would have better data, and what I mean by that is sometimes we get mismatched data for the same facility. So if you compare for one facility data across programs, you get slightly different information where you should be getting certain data fields the same. And so we hope with a common emission form, we would be able to get rid of that problem. Now, for state, local, tribal authorities, first of all, this is voluntary. We are not requiring that any state sign up to use the common form. We would like you to, and we understand that there's a variety of states with a variety of reporting systems. Some states still do paper or electronic forms that are submitted maybe even via email. Some states have their own custom reporting systems, and they are not interested in getting rid of those. So the common form is designed not to replace those systems if that's not what the state wants. The common form is designed to work with your system. In terms of data availability, SLTs would be able to retrieve data from the common form in usable formats. And also the common form will be customizable. There are a number of elements that are shared across programs and across states, and those are sort of what the first thing we're building into the common form. But we understand that sometimes each state, local, or tribal authority will have an additional requirement or additional requirements, and so there is an opportunity to customize your version, if you will, of the common form. You will also be able to customize your reports and save time on QA and QC, and you'll be able to assist your facilities hopefully a lot sooner than when you're submitting data to EPA. You would like to get those error checks sooner rather than later. Now, we're not going to get into the details of this. This is the work that we've done so far. We have worked extensively with our state, local, tribal partners on what we call the product design team. And we have gone in and done a lot of research to gather the requirements, the user requirements for this common form. So we've done a number of projects, for example, a QA/QC project where we found all the QA/QC checks that we would like to put in the common form. Again, for many, for many of the programs, as well as for state, local, tribal authorities. We also did, for example, an NEI and TRI comparison, so that we know what the common form needs to be asking with respect to those programs, and what data is shared and what data is not shared. However, this is one piece of what we've been building. The other important piece is getting input from industry. And we haven't really not been able to be in a position to get your input until now. So where are we with common form construction? For the last year, we've been working on one we've been calling the first year pilot. We've been working with Georgia and 5 of its pilot facilities. The common form, as I will explain in a moment, is being built in iterations. Right now, we are building the TRI, NEI, and SLT workflow into the common form. And by that, I mean this is our very first version of the common form, so it will not have all the programs yet. Our pilot state has indicated that they don't want to keep their reporting system. The Common Form pilot will have all the steps that you saw in the diagram I showed you, but not all the features will be there. So not all the bells and whistles will be there for the first pass at the Common Form. Those are things that we will be building over time. And for pilot is really just for testing, so it's in staging. It will not be available for real reporting, and it will only be available for the pilot facilities to work with. Important, again, is that the Common Form is not replacing any systems and is not asking for any program changes. Rather, it is something that will talk to the systems that are already out there. By June of 2020, we hope to have completed what we call the minimum viable product. That is the very basic first version of our Common Form. However, this version will be available for reporting. So we hope to get there by June of 2020. Past the minimum viable product phase, we will begin onboarding more state, local, and tribal authorities. We will add workflows. We will incorporate those bells and whistles that we'd like to have, and begin to build towards the other programs as well. And so you may ask yourselves, why are you building it like this? So we are following an agile paradigm instead of waterfall. Traditionally in waterfall, you spend a few years building software and then you deploy it and you hope that it works. The way we're building is agile. We build in increments, we test, we learn, and then we improve upon what we've already built. This means that in the long term, we have something more solid and useful for the customers. We are building out the essential functionality first, so the very basic things that this web application has to be able to do to satisfy the reporting requirements, versus trying to build one step very exhaustively and then not building the other steps. Because we know that states have unique needs, the Common Form will also be customizable, and that means that the states will be able to include some of the requirements that are exclusive to them. First, we have taken what the product design teams have created, and those user requirements are what we have used to start building the Common Form. And we are also adding Georgia, our pilot state, their needs. Over time, we will continue, as I said, to add more pieces and modules for the state, local, tribal authorities, and build in improvements given industry feedback. We're trying to build this so it's clean, simple, and intuitive. Everything that you need is on a screen. You do not need to move around or see excess clutter that distracts your eyesight, that makes it hard for you to find what you need. We want you to get where you need to go in as few steps as possible. We don't want you to need a 300-page manual to be able to navigate the Common Form. We're going to ask for your input today. First, we'd like you to focus on what's critical versus what's nice to have. We certainly want to hear both, but it's more important for us to build in what's critical first and then leave the nice to have for later iterations of the Common Form. We'd like you to focus on the functionality of what you see as opposed to how it looks. We have to comply with EPA design guidelines for websites, and we also have to be 508 compliant. We also invite you to provide specific use cases to your state, local, and tribal authority or industry. And also, tell us what you like. If you see something that you really like that you find that is going to be useful, please let us know. So we're going to move into our demonstration of our Common Emission Form progress. Just a couple of things to be mindful of. We're showing you the progress so far. The application is not complete yet at this time, so it doesn't reflect everything that we're going to build into it for the MVP. As I said, you will be able to see the new features as we move forward, just like any other software has versions that come out that have improvements. So bear with us, and thank you for your patience as we move forward. Also, we don't have any real data in there quite yet. So for some screens, you will see the names of our pilot facilities, but none of the data in there is actually their data. So just bear that in mind. We have tried to include data that is somewhat realistic, but just bear in mind it's not real data and is not meant to show anything about a specific facility. It's just for illustration purposes. As Dana mentioned, after the demo, we'll have a Q&A session. We don't know if we'll get to all of your questions, but please do put your questions into the box, because even if we don't get to them, we are recording this webinar and we'll be recording your questions. Your questions, suggestions, and comments will really help us make this product better, and so we can't make the product better if we don't hear from you. As Dana said, there will be a Q&A document posted together with this presentation. You can also send suggestions and questions after the fact to the following address, care@epa.gov. The most useful format for us is a user story. So you would write your comment or suggestion in the following way: I am, and then you would write in who you are. Maybe you're an industry reporter or certifier or an SLT reviewer. And I need the comment form to do or show something, whatever that is, so that I can do whatever it is that you need to do. Simple feedback in user story format is ideal. Of course, you are welcome to put in your user story and then add a little bit of an explanation if you need to. More materials are available, not just at the back of this PowerPoint, which will be available to you after the webinar, but you can also go to our website that's listed here. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn over the screen to Ed Knowles from CGI Federal. He and his team of coders, together with our own Kevin Brundage from EPA, have been doing a tremendous amount of work for you to be able to see what you're seeing today. Ed?
Okay, give me 1 second while I get the screen share going here. Alrighty, can you see my screen now, Julia?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as Julia mentioned, my name is Ed Knowles. I'm part of the development team that is helping the Office of Air and Radiation develop the Common Emissions Form. So I'm going to add a couple caveats to what Julia already caveated for some of this information. As she said, the screens are in progress. And so we're still very much in the middle of development for the work that we're doing here. So please just, take that into consideration. A lot is still, being built for what you're going to see. And the second thing that I'll add is that the data that I've selected, I've tried to be representative with what we are showing here, but it may not be exactly accurate to a real world scenario. Please don't get fixated on the specific data. More, how the form is working is really what we're trying to show here. All right. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. The Common Emissions Form is going to be hosted in EPA's Central Data Exchange. The Central Data Exchange is the agency's electronic reporting site. Some of you may already be familiar with it if you have come to EPA to report for other programs. I'm going to go ahead and log in to the Central Data Exchange, and hopefully everything runs quickly and smoothly here with my internet. All right, once I'm in, you can see that my user here has 3 different roles, all of which are for the CAER the program, the Combined Air Emissions. We have a preparer, which is someone who is able to create a emissions report on behalf of a facility. We have a certifier, which is someone who is able to both create a report and electronically sign it. They have been validated with their identity proofing and have signed an electronic signature agreement with the CDX so that they can submit a report electronically. And I also have a reviewer status. So this is what a state, local, or tribal authority may would be in here as, so that they could review a report that is submitted and then allow that report to be forwarded on to the agency for ingestion. So because I'm a developer, I have all of these roles so that I can show each of them. I'm going to go in just first as a certifier so you can kind of see what the form will be like. So when I first come in, you can see I have 3 facilities that my user is associated with. A preparer certifier could be associated with multiple facilities and be able to submit reports for multiple facilities depending on who they're working for and how those facilities are apportioned out. I'm going to choose one sample facility here and review the facility data for it. Hopefully it'll come up here. Maybe not. Try. There we go. I'm going to go on in and actually pick a report. So for this state facility that I have here, this Acme Pulp facility, you can see I have a 2019 report. I also have a 2020 report. So you should be able to go back and see all of the reports that you have submitted once you have submitted things into the system. Just like if you did your taxes online, you can go through and see the previous ones that you submitted. We want you to be able to do that as well here. If I click on view, like a previous report, I should be able to come in here and see a report that I have submitted previously. But that's not where we're going to focus today. I'm going to come back and go to the 2020 report. This is a report that I've already started. So I'm going to go back into the report and continue reporting here. And you can see that I already have a lot of pollutants and emissions in here that I have begun to build out my report for the EPA. When you first come into the reporting system, you're going to land here on this report summary page. And the report summary page has a couple key components that I want to run through. The first is the table that gives you a tabular list both of your emissions for the current year in tons. It'll show both the fugitive amount and the stack amount. For the sample facility we have right now, all of our release points are stacked, so we're only showing stack amount. We don't have any fugitive emissions. It will show you your current year, so the 2020, in this case, reported tons, and it will also show you the tons that were submitted for the previous year. In this case, it was 2019. You'll notice one of these, chloroform here, which is a sample emission I created, is reported this year, but was not reported the previous time I submitted. It's a new emission that we're reporting, and so it's captured here as non-reported. We have 2 buttons at the bottom of the screen, one where you can run your quality control check and one where you can certify and submit to the state, local, tribal authority. I have this option because I am a certifier. At the top of the screen, we have our life cycle for the report. There's only 4 stages. As William mentioned, we've tried to keep it simple. So the first stage is just submitting your report, entering your facility information and your emissions information. Once you've done that, you must perform a quality check in order to submit. And once you have passed the quality check, and you may have a few warnings, but as long as you don't have any errors, you're not missing any required data, or the data isn't outside of any boundaries that it should be, you will, this section of the progress bar will light up, and you'll be allowed to submit onto the SLT authority. Once you have certified and submitted electronically to the SLT authority, they'll review it, and then once they have approved it, this sign will light up as well over here on the far right. The SLT authority will have the option to reject the report and send it back to you with information on what they would like for you to augment before you resubmit. So that's the life cycle. On the left-hand side in the sidebar, we have the report summary page, which is on what we're on now. And we have 2 main components, the facility inventory and the emissions inventory. I'm going to walk through those pieces right here. So in the facility inventory, the first part is the actual information for the facility itself, name, address, location, NAICS code, those type of things. And you'll be able to add one or many contacts. In this case, we have a responsible official, a compliance contact, and a technical contact associated with this facility. The rest of the facility inventory consists of the physical components of the facility, the emission units, the release points, control devices. If I click in here on any of these, I'll get a list of what is created for this facility. Again, I just have a small amount of sample data in here. This facility has 5 emission units. If I click on any of these emission units, I'll come in. I can see the details of it, which I'll be able to edit, and I have specific emission processes that are associated. In this case, for this boiler, I could be running on natural gas or on fuel oil. I also may have a control associated with the emissions unit as well. So we're showing you the details as well as the facility association. Release points here, I have 5 release points I've created for this one, similar to the units. If I click on it, I'll get the release point information, which I'll be able to edit. I'll be able to add new ones, and I see the processes and controls associated. And then the same applies for the control devices. If I click on a control device, I will have information about that control, how that control is assigned, what order it's assigned in, and what pollutants it is controlling. All of this is information that's required to be submitted onto NEI. Beneath the facility inventory, we have the emissions inventory. So the units are listed, and under each unit are the processes that are running. So in this case, I have the 5 units that were listed up here: boiler, incinerator, kiln, some hardwood washers, and a digester exhaust. So if I click on any of these, I'll pick the incinerator to start with. I can see I have an incineration unit with the SEC code that is associated with that. And I can click into the process itself to see the process information, which I can then edit, update, and add new information. In this case, I'm incinerating, let's see, 6 days a week here. It's running an annual, and the calculation material for this particular one, I happen to have chosen air-dried bleached pulp here. So this is going to show you all of the pollutants that are associated. In this case, I've got chloroforming here twice, so hopefully I can come in here and just delete one of those, because you only really should have the pollutant listed once. I can see the release points associated with it, and if I dive into any of these pollutants, I should be able to see the specific information. I've got a recap of my process up here, which is my throughput that I'm doing here. Some people call it throughput, some people call it calculation value. So right now it's listed as calculation value. You can see for this one, I'm submitting 210 tons of material, and I've got chloroform in here as my pollutant. We're using US EPA emission factor as our calculation, and we've got our total emissions calculated. So to go into a little bit more detail of this, to show you kind of really quickly how one might add something, I'm going to add a new process and a few emissions for that process. Again, please don't hold my feet to the fire as to the validity of the actual emissions I might create here. It's just an example of what we are looking to do. So imagine for this boiler, right now we're running on natural gas and fuel. Maybe we also want to add another process for the coal. I will call this one, we'll say it's operating, and we'll say it started this past year. We'll say boiler on anthracite here. And I want to choose an SEC code that matches. So we're going to actually plug into EPA's SEC code search system here. And if I look for a coal boiler, hopefully I will get some information back. So I get all of the SEC codes that match the words coal and boiler, and obviously there's a lot of them in here. And this would be the same if you typed in any anything that would be associated with your particular industry. Let's see if I do hardwood washer, do I get anything? So I have a couple of those things for paper and wood products. But for our purposes, let's go back to coal boiler. I'm going to say I'm going to choose the pulverized coal one. We'll just assume that that's the one that I'm using for my process right now. I click on it and it adds it in here to my SEC code. So we're trying to make it easy so you don't have to copy and by hand and paste the SEC code from different locations. We want to try to help get the data as accurate as possible with you doing the least amount of difficult work to find that information. For the operating details, I'll fill out, we'll say we're running it 6 days a week. You'll notice here if I try to put like something that is incorrect, I'm going to get immediate feedback on these things, right? I can't be doing things 25 days of the week because that doesn't exist. I can't be doing more than 9,000 hours a year because that doesn't exist. So we'll say I'm doing 8,000 hours a year. We're operating 25% each season. In the reporting period here, we'll say that I'm doing input. My material, let's say it is anthracite. Hopefully, I should be able to find anthracite in here somewhere. I found it before. Let me try again. Making my life hard. There we go, anthracite. All right. Let's say we're doing 200 tons per year of anthracite. And you'll notice these drop downs, we're trying to, help you pick the right data. I think in the future, what we're going to be able to do is to associate the specific unit to measure and the specific calculation material with the SCC code that you pick, so that you can't accidentally choose some amount of like radiation for anthracite or something that doesn't correspond to the actual material or to the process that you're running. So if I come in and save this, you can see now I've got a coal boiler process added to my emission. If I click on the boiler here, let's say I want to go in and add some emissions associated with this process. So I'm just going to choose a couple of emissions. Again, these may not be, wholly accurate, but I'm going to do my best here. Let's say I choose nitrogen oxides as the first one. And what I'm going to do for this one is I'll say we're going to do this one with continuous monitoring system. We have a variety of emission calculation methods in here for you. If you choose something like a continuous monitoring system, we assume that you know the amount of emissions because you've been monitoring it, and so we'll say that you've got, 100 pounds of nitrogen oxide that you are generating from that. And you're not allowed to put an emission factor if you choose something that is doing that. Okay, so I've got one pollutant in. I'll add another one. Let's say we'll do like volatile organic compounds for this one. And for this calculation method, I could choose something like SLT emission factor or a trade group emission factor or a vendor emission factor. In that case, I know my emission factor, so I'm going to, put it in myself, something like this. I'll call it like vendor emission factor. And we'll say that the numerator is in pounds, the denominator is in tons, which should match our calculation material up here, and the total amount that we're doing here is in tons. If I calculate my emissions, it should do it for me, 200 times 1.4. Right? So obviously these are pretty easy calculations, but the idea is instead of the user having to calculate it, as long as they enter the right information, we're going to force the calculation on them. If you try to pick something that doesn't exist or what you're trying to do, like if you try to pick gallons here for something, right, you should get a warning that's telling you, listen, these don't match up, you can't actually do this. So we're trying to make the calculation as maybe not 100% foolproof, but as foolproof as we can to get the data, correct for you. If I calculate the emissions there, everything looks good, I'll save it. Now I've got a couple things in here, VOC and nitrogen. And the last one I'll show you here, I'll choose ammonia. So say NH3. You can search, you can see here, you'll notice I can search on ammonia and I should get it. I can search on the CAS number, or I can search on the pollutant ID here. So I'm choosing NH3. And for this one, I'm going to show you two things. If I choose an EPA emission factor here, you'll notice these fields are grayed out. I can't enter them myself. I have to search for one. So I chose a uncontrolled EPA emission factor. And when I search, I see there's one emission factor for ammonia that is uncontrolled. And so this is what I have to choose from. I can select it. If I choose a controlled emission factor, I get two choices. I get one for selective non-catalytic reduction. I get another one for selective catalytic reduction, depending on which control measure I'm using. So I will choose the second one. And once I put that in, I'll say US EPA emission factor. I calculate my emissions and it does the hard work for me here. and I should be able to save it. All right, so now I have a emissions with associated with this process. I'm going to do a little bit of voodoo on the back end for just 1 second. Hopefully this works. Excellent, because this process was not associated with the release point yet, and we didn't have that built in as an online thing. But you can see now this emissions, the new process that I created for coal boiling, is associated with my primary stack with this release point here. So if I come back, I've got VOC, nitrogen oxide, and ammonia. I should here in my report summary now have some extra data that I didn't have before. I've got volatile organic compounds, I've got nitrogen oxide. You can see these were not previously reported in the previous reporting year, but I've got my tons of that created. And you'll notice these tons have already been automatically calculated for us. Even though we reported in pounds, the screen here has changed to tons. So let's assume that I'm all good and ready for this report. I think I've got what I need. The next thing I would do is run my quality control check. And we are currently, as of this exact sprint that Julio was talking about, we run in Agile format. We're actually building the quality checks. We're starting to build them as part of the sprint. So we don't really have many to show you right now, but you would come to this page. We don't have any errors and warnings because we did such a good job filling this report out that all of our required data is in there, and we didn't flub anything, so we don't have any errors and warnings, and our things should be validated here. So let's see, if I come back into my report, you'll notice now that the perform quality checks button is lit up. So I'm all good to go. This thing has been validated, and the next thing I need to do is submit it onto the SLT authority. So I'm going to go and certify, and we'll hope that our certification process works. So I'm going to enter EPA's CAER process, which is their online electronic reporting tool. I'm going to accept the penalty of law here that I'm going to do everything. So the e-signature widget will come up and prompt me for my password, log in here, and then it will randomly choose one of my questions to verify. I hope I get this one right. I have to remember which I put into my favorite vacation destination. Let me see. Oh, I got it right. Okay. And then finally, I will sign the file. So I won't save it. The widget tells me that my submission was successful. If I come back in and view it, you'll see here that it has been submitted to the SLT authority, and it is now awaiting their review. So thanks to the magic of the internet, I'm going to switch over to another browser. I'm going to log in, and I'm going to log in this time as a state, local, tribal authority reviewer. So imagine I'm a reviewer for the state of Georgia. I come in, and now I can now see that Acme Pulp Mill has submitted a report to me. I have a couple things I can do. I can view a summary of the report, which is very similar to what the user was able to see. I can kind of get the list. I can see what they submitted this year, what they submitted last year, and do kind of a once over and see if there's anything that is looks out of whack. I can also dive into the report directly. If I view the report, I'll be able to dive in and see, specifically what this guy entered for his coal boiler and why he's using, ammonia in here for his coal boiler. But assuming I like it and I feel like this is good, I'll come back to my dashboard. Let's say I found a problem. I want to reject it. So it's going to ask me, do you want to reject this back to the user? In a future sprint, we're going to build in the ability for them to include a reason and notification as to why they're doing it, specific problems that they found that they want updated. Right now, we're just, for the purposes of the day, we're just showing it being rejected. So if I click OK and I've rejected it, you'll see I have no submissions that are awaiting my action at the moment, right? Because there's nothing in submitted state that's been rejected back. So I'll come back over as a preparer and certifier again. If I load this thing back up, you'll notice that I'm back here. I am now under the perform quality check. It's not submitted to SLT authority. Probably if I was on my report summary page, I would get a notification that says, and an email that said, hey, this is the problem that we had with your emissions report. We'd like for you to change these 2 or 3 things before you resubmit it. So we'll assume that we did those. We're going to resubmit it again. So let me just show this, log in, see if we get a different question this time. My first pet's name. Another iffy choice for me. Let's see here. It liked it. Okay, I'll sign it. Thank you. All right, so it's been submitted again. It is there for the SLT authority to review. If I come over here as my SLT user and I refresh my screen, I now see this very persistent reporter has submitted another report back to me. This time I'm going to say it looks good. If I come in and look at my summary, all right, everything looks good this time. I'm going to hit accept and submit to EIS. And they may do this multiple times. So now that should then render this report. If I come back here, hopefully you'll see that it has now been approved by the SLT authority and submitted on to EPA. So Julia, I think that probably concludes everything that I had to demo today. I'm going to turn it back over to you, and I'll stop sharing my screen unless you all want me to show anything.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, Ed. And I think we can start answering the questions. We had a few questions from participants, and we can address some of them. And then the questions that we cannot address will definitely be responded through a Q&A that will be posted after the webinar. So the first question that we had, and these are actually two questions from two different participants, but they are similar. Someone is asking, how can we become a pilot facility, and what are the pilot facilities? The current ones.
If Jing's on the call, could we unmute her? I think she'd be better.
Okay. I'm working to unmute.
Yeah. So I'm trying to have Jing Wang from Georgia DNR unmuted. She is our point of contact for the work that we're doing.
Okay. So I think we might need a second here just to make sure that Jing's audio is working properly.
Okay.
So if you want, we can go back to that question after that.
Yeah. So definitely, if we don't get to Jing Wang is your point of contact for all of this if you are in Georgia and you want to have more information.
Yeah, Julio, can you hear me?
Oh, great. Okay, there you are.
Okay, great. Yes, if you're from Georgia, the facility, or you're a consultant from Georgia for Georgia facilities, you definitely can contact us. My phone number is 443637137. Also, you can email me my first name, JING, my last name, WANG, @dnr.ga.gov. And definitely, we are recruiting more facilities for pilot testing.
Great, Jing. Thank you so much.
Someone else is asking, I'm hearing information concerning air emissions. TRI has other information that isn't air emissions, and how will other information be merged to this and properly integrated into each individual chemical reporting sheet and ensure it is applied properly? Great,
thank you for that question. So yes, so right now the combined air emissions reporting is for air emissions only. So what will happen is you will fill out your report. Your toxics information will be aggregated to the level that TRI requires it. And without getting into a lot of IT speak, that data will be available for TryMe Web to pick up. And when you go into TryMe Web to do your other media reporting, the air data will have been pre-populated in TryMe Web.
Thanks, Julia. There was another question. Someone said, I assume that states can map to these fields if their databases include the same information, but the fields may have slightly different names?
Yes, so excellent question. That's part of why we talk about customization. that we know that some states have things slightly differently, and so we would work with that state, for example, to create the relevant crosswalks or whatever we need to put in to ensure that the proper information, the proper data fields and pollutants are being transmitted to the right program.
Okay. Will there be an option to download the previous year's data into the current year as a starting point? Someone says this saves a lot of time. And then we also had some similar questions about how can you pre-populate the system with our existing sources and previous year's data, so we don't have to populate all the information from scratch. And then someone else was asking if for the initial setup, if there will be a backend spreadsheet upload option.
Great questions. So the short answer is yes, eventually we will be offering those options. We understand that it's a heavy lift to start from a report from scratch. So we are hoping that we'll be able to get that in for MVP, both options. We will try to work hard to get there. Hopefully we will. Either way, we'll work with Georgia to make sure that facilities are able to do what they need to do in a timely way. And I think, Dana, to preempt you, I saw another question about the timing of this. We are working full speed to get to basically make the application available for reporting for 2019, but we understand that if we don't, you would still use Gecko, and then we would do the reporting the following year. I'd rather not get into that because that's Jing's territory, so I don't know if we can unmute Jing again if she has anything to say about that.
Jing, do you have anything to add about it?
Right now, I don't have anything to add on.
Okay. We have another question. Someone was asking, will the common form feed into the state systems similar to the Tier 2 reporting? So another question to that same question, actually, data validation of emissions reporting. I think that was more the explanatory comment around this question.
I'm not sure I can answer that one. I don't know if Mark, you can answer that?
Okay. Let me try to unmute Mark once we do that. Okay. Mark, let me know if you can, if you are able to talk.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
So for some reason, I can't actually see that question on the screen and I don't understand it. Can you go over it again?
Sure. So someone is asking, will the common form feed into the state systems similar to the Tier 2 reporting? And this is a question related to data validation of emissions reporting.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I know what Tier 2 reporting is, and I don't think I do know that. So if that's something that is involved in either the Georgia reporting workflow and that ultimately ends up in the National Emissions Inventory or TRI, and we need to know more about that. If it's sort of separate and unrelated, we're not focusing on that for right now. But I just don't know enough about what the question to be able to help there.
Yeah, so if the participant that asked this question, if you could offer more details about that, we can try to address it either at the end of the call or through an email offline. There was another question. Someone is saying production information is not required for several of these rules, just an emission rate. Will this form add this requirement?
So I see that as a calculation method. We know that there's multiple calculation methods. Some of them require you to put input information and to calculate emissions, some of them don't. So ultimately, if a program is requiring or allowing a specific calculation method, which I think your example falls under a calculation method, we would accommodate that.
Okay. Another question was, is the plan for this to replace the NEI EIS?
No, the Common Form will be working with all of the current systems.
Mm-hmm. There was someone asking, will the form handle pollutant groups? Like, for instance, check that the sum of individual pollutants don't exceed the reported pollutants. I think they are referring to specific VOCs, HABs.
Yes, so our product design team, one of our product design teams did extensive work on comparing just the TRI to the NEI, and they have come up with a number of crosswalks and sort of issues in estimation of emissions that we need to incorporate into the Common Form to accommodate those differences. Dana, are you still there?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. So, Julia, I think you touched a bit on this, but I'm trying to retrieve the question that I had. Let me check.
In the meantime, I see someone asking about AP42 and WebFire. We have some projects to make sure that we can eventually pull emission factor data from WebFire. Another product design team also worked on what we call the emission factor compendium, which will contain state-specific emission factors. So eventually the goal is to have all of that being pulled into the Common Form available to reporters so they can select their emission factors. Obviously the state has to weigh in on what you're allowed to use and what you're not, but that will all be in there.
Thank you. So someone is asking, how will you handle cases where TRI air emissions don't get reported to NEI?
So there are some HAPs that go into NEI. Really, it's what you are required to do. If you are only required for whatever reasons to report to one program, you can go through, you could go to Try Me Web, for example, and just report directly. The idea, though, is that the Common Form would be available to you to help you with all your calculations. Once you've put in all your calculations, you would obviously put in not just your NEI pollutants, but also your TRI pollutants where they do not overlap, and that way you would be able to send them to each program.
Thank you. How will the ownership or the name changes be accommodated in the Common Form?
So we will have a process, first of all, for NEI reporting. Georgia already has a process, so we will follow that process where you must be sort of allowed, if you will, to register to report and certify for a specific facility, and then you will be able to go into the Common Form and perform edits in subsequent years.
Okay. Do you plan to add the ability of the facility to add supporting information to their submittal, such as a spreadsheet where emissions are calculated using a mass balance?
Yes, we will. As you notice, we already have comment boxes in the Common Form. So in those boxes would be where you would write something to your state, local or tribal authority regarding, additional information, and we will allow you to, if you will, append whatever information you need to add.
Okay. Someone is saying, I'm hearing Georgia will be using this in 2019, and what about other states such as South Carolina? What is their status?
We are in the process of recruiting new states, so if you are interested, we are interested in talking to you. In the background slides, you'll see we have sort of 4 broad cases where, depending on what the state is currently using for reporting, whether they don't have a system or they have a custom system or they're using Slice, the Common Form would work with you. If you are a case 4 state, and that means you either don't have a system or don't want to keep your system, it would, in theory, be easier to onboard you because that's what we built this first version for. If you have a custom system, we would have to do some additional work to onboard you so that the common form either sends data to your system or picks data up from your system. We would love to have those conversations with you. So if you want to reach out to myself, Tammy Manning, or Stacy Knapp, we can have that conversation. You don't have to be signing yourself up to anything yet, but if you want to know more about how this would work, we would love to talk to you.
Someone else is asking, how will you handle emission inventories if you have specific algorithms in your permits that are different from calculations in CAER?
So the beauty of the common form, right, it's a computer. And so if we have to include more calculation methods for specific requirements, we can do that. And the beauty is the computer will do those calculations for you.
Thank you. And Julia, I think you touched a bit on this. You talked about Gecko, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. We had a few questions regarding that, so I will read one of them. So someone is saying Gecko currently has a bulk entry option for throughput data. Is this being considered for the system, or will we have to click through for each emission unit to input this information?
We are going to do the very best we can to provide that bulk upload for MVP because a lot of you have asked for it, and we understand that it's very tedious for you to have to enter data manually if you have a big facility or multiple facilities.
Someone else is asking, can facilities have multiple certifiers because they can change frequently and the backup may be needed?
Jing, do you want to answer that question?
So, Donna, what's the question again? Can you
someone was asking if facilities can have multiple certifiers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in this case, Georgia, we do have a can give multiple personnel in the facility to view the to process the emissions inventory. So we're in the process to working with EPA to get this functionality into the common emissions form.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. Someone else is asking, does the state system, like for example, SLICE, feed the common form, or does the common form populate the state system?
We have contemplated both workflows potentially.
Okay. Someone else was asking, hi, the demo workflow showed submit to state, but since this is an EPA CDX system, is it also going to EPA? Once the data is in the system, will EPA be handling looking at the data before the state submits to EPA?
So if I understood, you're asking about the state review. So if it's NEI data, the state definitely would look at that submission.
Someone else was asking, is it possible to see the timestamps of events to show when the report was submitted to SLT or approved by the SLTs?
We are hoping that that will be the case because we understand that we want to keep a good record of the submission. And Dana, I don't know if you are able right now to find Juan Parra in the attendant list. He may be able to answer the Tier 2 question. You'd have to unmute him though.
Got it. Juan, I just unmuted your line, so let me know if you are able to talk about the TRI question.
Can you repeat the question, Dana? Sorry. It was...
Yeah. Let me find that. I think someone was saying TRI has other information that isn't air emissions, and how will that information be merged to this and properly integrated into the chemical reporting sheets and ensure it is applied properly.
Just a second. He doesn't have a mic, so he's going to type the question in, and I can read it. In the meantime, let's move to another.
Okay.
Question.
We also had a few more detailed questions, so let me just go through some of them. Someone was asking if the software will be open source.
Kevin, can you answer that question?
Sure. Yeah, at this point, no, we don't intend to. I mean, the system will be open for people to take advantage of the different services that are available, but technically speaking, it wouldn't be considered an open source solution.
Okay. So Juan is saying that we use the TriFit to verify ADs for facilities to the TRI question that was asked.
Okay. Thanks, Julia, and thanks, Juan, as well. I think we are almost at the end of our webinar. We did receive a few other questions that we haven't addressed on today's webinar. So, Julia, as you were mentioning, the plan is to go through these questions and try to address them in a written Q&A, and then we will be sharing it with everyone on the call today. So we are almost at the end of our webinar. So Julia, I will just turn it over to you for any final remarks.
Thank you, Dana. So again, thank you everyone for attending the webinar. We hope that you found it not only interesting, but that you will continue to send us your questions, concerns, suggestions. And if you saw anything that you really like, please let us know that as well, so we can try to create the best product that we possibly can. Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for participating and also for the good discussion questions. So the webinar recording and the presentation will be available on the EPA CAER website in the following weeks, and we will follow up with everyone after the webinar. Thanks everyone and have a great day.
Thank you.